The fire was a living thing, a beast with 1,000 teeth, gnawing through the house where whispers twisted into wails. I was 11, my arms locked around Leo, a newborn. His shallow breaths my only shield against despair. They called it the House of Whispers, a grave for kids like me, where we lingered until we were nothing. That night, it burned. And I saw him, a man, his eyes cold as a rattlesnake's, clawing for Leo through the smoke. My blood roared, but I slammed my foot into his shin, fierce and raw, ripping Leo free. We burrowed into a cabinet under the sink, my shaking hand smothering his cries. Flames howled, smoke choking my chest, but I held fast. If I broke, we'd be lost, like the others, erased without a trace. That night carved me fear, fire, and a rage I didn't know I owned. Saving Leo wasn't just survival. It was my fist raised against monsters who thought we were worthless. Each second in that inferno etched a vow. I'd fight, no matter the cost. If you've ever stood your ground for someone, knowing it might end you, drop a comment. I've faced that fire. I need to know how many of you have stared down that choice run or resist, no half steps. Tell me your fight. I'm Chloe, 11 when the fire tore my world apart. I'm not your average kid small. Wiry, with eyes that catch every shadow's twitch and a tongue that stays still unless it must cut. Trust is a phantom, a lesson seared into me at the House of Whispers. That place was no sanctuary. It was a snare, holding children until they vanished like dust on the wind. I don't remember my parents, just the hollow where they should be, a weight that grinds my bones. Lily was my haven. My only friend, her laughter a rebellion against our chains, until she was taken, leaving a wound that festers when I breathe. I'm tough, forged in survival's crucible, but not unbreakable. Nightmares hunt me, flames licking high, hands snatching, voices hissing my name. I loathe the fear that sticks like damp rot, the doubt that I'm enough to keep Leo whole. Saving him was my first defiance, a spark proving I could be more than a trembling ghost. He's my purpose, my reason to claw through the dark, but I'm torn, half of me aches to flee, to dissolve into the desert's vast silence, and half burns to shatter the world that broke us. Lily's absence is my scar, a pulse of grief that drives me to guard what's left. I'm a watcher, a survivor, but deep down, I'm a girl wrestling to believe she's worth saving. Every step I take is a fight against the void, a refusal to let the system win. I carry Lily's memory like a blade, sharp and heavy, cutting through the lies that bind me. Lily's bracelet is my sole keepsake, a worn leather strand, a single blue bead gleaming like her eyes. She pressed it into my palm the night before they stole her. We hid in the attic, weaving dreams of escape, of a life beyond the walls that caged us. Keep this, Chloe, she murmured. It's proof we're alive. Dawn broke, and her bed was bare, the adults spinning lies of adoption. I knew the truth. Lily was gone, devoured by the system's hunger. I was 10, and betrayal sank its claws, cold as frost, bitter as ash. The bracelet stays hidden under my sleeve, a secret I touch when the world grows cruel. It's my wound. The moment I learned no savior was coming, that trust was a trap sprung tight. Each glance at it summons Lily's face, her voice, and a fury that burns brighter than the fire. It's why I fought for Leo, why I couldn't let him fade like her. This bracelet is my loss, my defiance, a tether to a girl who deserved freedom. It's the weight of being abandoned, the fuel for every stand I take against the dark. I wear it like armor, a reminder that I'm still here, still fighting, when so many aren't. It's the echo of Lily's laugh, the sting of her absence, and the fire that keeps me moving forward. The desert yawned wide and unforgiving, but a fiercer storm loomed. Could I shield Leo when the past came to reclaim us? The desert was a vast and pitiless expanse, a sea of dust and bone where hope withered under the sun's glare. I crouched at a derelict gas station, Leo's fevered body scorching my arms, his frail whimpers cutting deeper than the hunger clawing my insides. I was a hunted thing, eyes scanning for predators in every gust of sand. Arthur Caldwell, a stranger in a sleek car, found us there, his gaze heavy with something I couldn't name, pity, perhaps, or guilt. His voice was gentle, but gentleness was a lie I'd learned to fear. Don't take him, I rasped, clutching Leo, my only kin in a world that despised us. He didn't, but a shadow lingered beyond the pump-safe figure, motionless, watching. One of theirs, I knew, from the House of Whispers, the place that birthed our nightmares. The world was no refuge. It was a machine, grinding down strays like me and Leo, casting us out as refuse. Society saw us as stains, children to be erased. And that truth burned fiercer than thirst. Arthur offered shelter, food, but every promise felt like a noose tightening. The system wasn't dead. It stalked us, its breath hot on our necks. Lily's face haunted me, her laugh echoing in the wind, and the weight of her loss pressed like a stone on my chest. Each stranger's stare was a verdict, each sound a warning. I wasn't just fighting for survival, I was defying a world that willed us gone, a beast that fed on silence. Arthur's presence didn't soothe. It sharpened the stakes, a reminder that nowhere was safe, that the desert's emptiness only mocked our fragility. Arthur's mansion loomed like a citadel, its vast halls too quiet, too clean, a mausoleum for the living. He gave us clothes, warm meals, a bed soft as clouds, but I braced for the blade behind the kindness. Then, in the dead of night, I heard him, his voice low on the phone, speaking of reporting us to someone. My heart turned to ice, heavy and sharp. Was he delivering us to them? I'd seen the system's work kids like Lily, vanished, their beds cold, the adults' lies slick as oil. I fled to the bathroom. Leo pressed to my chest, whispering, "They won't take you." Arthur's promises were a trap, and this betrayal cut deeper than the fire's claws. I dared to hope, to soften. And now we were ensnared again, in a cage of marble and glass. The world judged us worthless, burdens to be swept away, and Arthur's words confirmed it. Lily's bracelet burned against my wrist, its blue bead a cold accusation, stirring the grief of her theft. Trust was a poison, and I'd sipped it, endangering Leo with my weakness. The system was a leviathan, its heads countless, and Arthur was merely its newest mask. I stood there, shaking, seeing Lily's empty bunk, feeling the sting of being forsaken again. When someone you trusted betrayed you, how did it sear? Was it just? Share your story in the comments. Did they cross a line? I wouldn't let Arthur decide our fate. In the moon's pale glow, I packed a bag of stale bread, a thin blanket, Leo's bottle ready to melt into the desert's merciless arms. But as I crept past his study, I saw him, bent over a desk strewn with papers, reading about lost children, about hells like the House of Whispers. His face was worn, not cunning, his eyes tracing lines of truth, not deceit. A spark flickered in me, halting my flight. Maybe he wasn't the hunter I feared. I didn't trust him, not yet, but I slid the bag beneath my bed and stayed. It was my first stand, a quiet defiance against the panic that urged me to run. Leo's soft breath steadied me, and Lily's bracelet pulsed like a vow. I'd watch Arthur, weigh his every word, but I wouldn't let fear command me. This was my rebellion, small as a seed, rooted in barren ground. The desert loomed, vast and hungry, but so did my resolve, a fragile thing growing in the dark. I wasn't ready to slay the beast, but I was done bowing to it. The past was a shadow. Creeping closer, could I face its teeth without losing all I held? Leo's fever spiked, a fire in his tiny bones, his whimpers slicing through the mansion's sterile hush. Arthur insisted on a clinic, his voice firm, unyielding. My chest tightened, a vice of dread. Hospitals meant records, questions, eyes that pried too deep. I saw Lily's face. Her laugh drowned in the memory of the House of Whispers, where kids vanished under official stamps. If we went, they'd find us the system's hounds, sniffing for strays like me and Leo. I begged Arthur to wait, my words sharp, desperate, but he loaded us into the car, the desert blurring past like a fever dream. At the clinic, I hid my face in a hoodie, clutching Leo, his heat seeping into my skin. Every nurse's glance was a blade, every clipboard a chain. I felt the past rising, a tide of shadow, its breath cold on my neck. The fire hadn't killed it. It was alive, waiting to swallow us. Lily's bracelet burned against my wrist, a reminder of what happened when you trusted the wrong hands. The world wasn't safe, it was a hunter, and we were its quarry. Marked from the moment we escaped. Arthur didn't see the danger, his wealth a shield I couldn't borrow. Each step through those sterile halls echoed the house's creaking floors, each voice a whisper of betrayal. I wasn't just scared for Leo, I was scared for us, for the fragile thread holding our survival. The system didn't forget its runaways, and I felt its gaze, heavy as stone, ready to crush us back into silence. A woman in the clinic lingered too long, her eyes like flint, cutting through my disguise. She asked my name, her voice smooth but barbed. I lied. muttering Sarah, but her stare didn't waver, a predator sizing up prey. Later, I saw her on a phone, her whispers sharp, her glances darting to us. She was one of them. I knew it. A cog in the machine that ran the House of Whispers. My pulse hammered, the fire's roar echoing in my skull. Was she calling them, the men who'd burned our world? Arthur was busy with forms, blind to the threat. That night, back at the mansion, I couldn't sleep, hearing footsteps in the dark, seeing the man from the fire, his snake eyes gleaming. The system wasn't a ghost. It was flesh and blood, tracking us through the desert's heart. Lily's absence clawed at me, her bracelet a weight I couldn't shed. This woman was its new face, a reminder that nowhere was safe, that every door had teeth. I wanted to run, to vanish into the night, but Leo's coughs anchored me. The threat was real, not a shadow but a blade, poised to sever us. I stood by the window, watching the horizon, knowing they were out there, closing in. Why must victims always hide? Should I have fled or fought? Tell me in the comments, what would you choose? I decided fear wouldn't break me. Leo needed me, and I wasn't Lily. I wouldn't vanish without a fight. In the morning, I told Arthur about the woman, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. He listened, his eyes narrowing, not dismissing me like others had. For the first time, I felt seen, not as a child but as a warrior, small but unyielding. I wasn't just protecting Leo. I was claiming our right to exist, to breathe free of the system's chains. Lily's bracelet gleamed, not a wound now, but a talisman, fueling my resolve. The desert was vast, but so was my will, a spark growing into flame. I'd face whatever came, not for myself but for Leo, for the kids still trapped in places like the house. Arthur nodded, promising to keep us hidden, and I believed him. Not fully, but enough. This was my stand, my vow etched in the quiet of that dawn. I was done running. I'd fight, claw, endure. The system could hunt, but I'd be no easy prey. The truth lay buried. But unearthing it meant blood. Could I keep Leo safe in the storm ahead? The mansion's silence was a weight, heavy as the desert's dusk, but I couldn't stay still. Leo's coughs grew softer, but his frailty spurred me. Arthur saw it too, his eyes no longer soft but sharp, like a man waking to war. He began to dig, not with shovels but with wealth, his fingers prying into the shadows of the House of Whispers. He called Eleanor Vance, a social worker with lines on her face like a map of battles fought. She knew of places like the house, where children vanished, their names erased from ledgers. I sat with them, my voice a blade, cutting through fear to speak of Lily, her bracelet, her laugh, the lie of her adoption. Each word was a wound reopened, but I bled willingly, for Leo, for her. Arthur's screens glowed with data, old reports, names of men who ran the house, their faces cold as coins. Eleanor's voice was grim, recounting rumors of kids shipped like cargo, no trace left. The truth was a beast, buried deep, but we clawed for it. I told them of the fire, the man with snake eyes, the cabinet where I hid Leo. Arthur found a lead shell company tied to the house, its records thin but damning. Every fact was a step into danger, a stone kicked loose on a cliff's edge. I felt the system's gaze, not distant but close, its breath a chill on my neck. Lily's absence throbbed, her bracelet a pulse against my wrist, urging me to keep speaking. Arthur's wealth opened doors, but the truth was no gentle thing. It was a storm, and we were calling it down. Eleanor warned of risks, of men with power who'd kill to stay hidden. I didn't care. The house wasn't just a building. It was a machine, grinding kids into dust, and I'd tear it open. Each revelation tightened the noose, but I saw Leo's tiny hand, felt his trust, and knew I couldn't stop. The desert outside was vast, but the real wilderness was here, in the secrets we hunted, in the fight we chose. The night turned traitor, a car idling beyond Arthur's gate. Its lights doused, a predator in wait. I saw it from my window, a black shape against the desert's gray, and my heart kicked like a trapped beast. They were here, the system's dogs, sniffing our trail. I told Arthur, my voice low, urgent, and he peered through the blinds, his face hardening. Eleanor called, her words clipped. Stay low, trust no one. The next dawn brought a letter. Slipped under the gate, no name, just ink, cease or pay. My hand shook, but not from fear. Rage, hot and raw, burned through me. Lily's bracelet gleamed, a reminder of what they'd taken. What they'd take again if I faltered. Arthur burned the letter, but the threat lingered, a shadow stitched to our heels. I wanted to run, to drag Leo into the desert's jaws and vanish. But his fevered eyes held me fast. The system wasn't just watching. It was closing in, its teeth bared. Arthur doubled the locks, hired men to patrol, but I knew walls couldn't stop them. The house's ghosts were alive, their hands reaching through time. I saw the man from the fire in every dark corner, his eyes glinting, promising erasure. Eleanor sent file names, dates. A trail of missing kids, each one a stab to my gut. The system was vast, its roots deep, and we were ants gnawing at its base. The car returned the next night, slower, bolder, a taunt. I gripped Leo, whispering he'd be safe, but doubt gnawed me. Was I leading us to slaughter? Arthur's resolve didn't waver, but mine trembled, the weight of Lily's loss a stone in my chest. The warning wasn't just words, it was a vow, a blade poised above us. Yet I couldn't turn back. The truth was our only weapon, and I'd wield it, even if it cut us too. The desert whispered of escape. But I chose the fight, for Leo, for the kids still caged. I made my stand in Arthur's study, the air thick with the scent of ink and resolve. I'd tell my story, every shard of it, and let the world choke on the truth. Sitting across from Arthur, I spoke into a recorder, my voice steady, carving out the fire, the man, the screams of the House of Whispers. I named Lily, her bracelet of fire on my wrist, and the kids who vanished, their faces etched in my skull. Each word was a brick pulled from the system's wall, a risk that could bury us. Arthur's eyes held mine. Not pitying but fierce, a man bound to our cause. I spoke of Leo, how I kicked and hid to save him, how the system hunted us still. It was like flaying myself, laying bare the scars. But I did it for them, for Leo's future, for Lily's justice. We'd send this to Sarah Jenkins, a reporter hungry for truth, and let her light the fuse. The system would come. I knew men with power. With guns, with lies, but I was done hiding. Lily's laugh echoed in me, not a wound now, but a call, urging me to break the silence. Arthur swore to protect us, his wealth a shield. But I relied on my own fire, the spark born in that burning house. The desert outside was a void, but I'd fill it with our story, a beacon for every kid lost to the dark. I finished, my throat raw, and Arthur stopped the tape. The room was still, but the air hummed with purpose. We were no longer prey. We were hunters, chasing a beast bigger than us. I'd expose them, no matter the cost. For every child they'd stolen, for the girl I'd been. They branded me a liar, a spark to be snuffed. Is truth worth dying for? Should I have stayed silent? Share your thoughts below. The truth was a blade, sharp and heavy. Could I wield it without cutting us all? The tape of my story left Arthur's mansion like a bird loose to storm. We sent it to Sarah Jenkins, a reporter with eyes like a hawk, her hunger for truth a match for our fire. She came to us, not to the sterile office of some city desk, but to the desert's edge, where the wind carried the scent of dust and defiance. I sat across from her, Leo asleep in my arms, his breaths a rhythm steadying my own. I didn't trust her, not fully. Trust was a currency I'd spent too often, but her questions were sharp, not cruel, cutting to the bone of what the House of Whispers had done. I spoke of the fire, the man with serpent's eyes, the cabinet where I'd hidden Leo as flames roared. I named Lily, her bracelet a cold weight on my wrist, her absence a wound I bared without flinching. Sarah listened, her pin scratching like a pulse, and I saw belief in her gaze, not pity. Arthur stood by, his wealth a silent shield, but this was my fight, my voice carving the truth into the air. Sarah left with the tape, promising to break the story wide. Days later, she called Martha Hayes, an old neighbor of the house, had seen kids taken in the night, her words a mirror to mine. Sarah tracked her down, coaxed her to speak, and Martha's voice, cracked with years, became our first ally. Her testimony was a stone in the sling, small but heavy, aimed at the system's heart. The article was forming, a blade we'd forged together, and I felt the desert's vastness shrink, the world tilting toward us. Lily's laugh echoed in me, not a ghost now, but a spark, urging me forward. We weren't just telling a story, we were tearing down walls, exposing the machine that ate children whole. The risk was a shadow, ever present, but Leo's tiny hand in mine was worth it. Sarah's work was our first step, a crack in the system's armor, and I stood taller, knowing we'd begun. Sarah's article hit like a stone through glass, its words screaming across papers and screens. The House of Whispers, Nevada's secret shame. People read, shared, raged. Strangers posted online, Their comments a chorus of shock, some calling for justice, others weeping for kids like me. Martha's story, woven with mine, gave weight to the truth, a small triumph that made my chest ache with something like hope. But the system didn't sleep. Threats came swift, a venomous tide. Arthur's phone buzzed with calls, voices hissing warnings to stop. Emails flooded in, anonymous, promising ruin. One night, his car's tires were slashed, rubber gnarled like flesh. A message carved in the dark. I saw it at dawn, my stomach twisting, guilt clawing me. Had I brought this on him? Lily's bracelet burned, a reminder of the cost of speaking, of the lives lost to silence. The internet turned jagged. Some called us liars, pawns, kids inventing tales for pity. Each word was a lash, doubting my fire, my fight. Arthur's face grew tight, his men patrolling the gates, but the mansion felt less a fortress, more a target. Sarah warned us of whispers in the city, of men with money moving to bury the story. The system was a beast, wounded but snarling, its claws still sharp. I held Leo, his eyes clear now, and wondered if I'd damned us all. The victory was real. People knew, cared, but the obstacles were a storm, threatening to drown our spark. I saw the man from the fire in every shadow, felt the house's grip tightening. Yet the comments online, the ones that believed, kept me grounded. We'd stirred something, a ripple growing to a wave, but the price was heavy, and I bore it like a stone. Was I seeking justice or stirring chaos? Am I right or reckless? Drop your thoughts below. What's the cost of truth? I stood in Arthur's study, the articles printout in my hands, its ink a map of our fight. I wouldn't quit. Leo deserved a world where he could grow, not hide. Lily deserved a voice, even if it was mine. The threats, the slashed tires, the venom online, they were chains, but I'd break them. I told Arthur, my voice firm, no longer a child's but a warrior's, that we'd keep going. He nodded, his eyes fierce, a man bound to us by more than pity. Sarah was digging deeper, chasing leads on the house's backers, and I'd feed her every memory, every scar. The system was vast, but so was my will, a fire kindled in that burning house, unquenched by fear. Lily's bracelet was no longer just pain. It was a vow, a light guiding me through the dark. I thought of Martha, her courage, and the strangers online who believed us. Their words a shield against the hate. We weren't alone. The desert was wide, but our fight was wider, a beacon for every kid still caged. I held Leo, his warmth a promise, and swore to tear the system down, brick by brick. Arthur spoke of Eleanor, of plans to protect us, but my strength came from within, from the girl who'd kicked a monster and saved a life. The obstacles were real, but so was our momentum, a tide rising against the dark. I'd face the threats, the doubters, the shadows, because stopping meant betraying Leo, Lily, myself. The world was watching now, and I'd make it see, make it feel the weight of our truth. This was my commitment, etched in the quiet of that room, a fire that would burn until justice came. The world was waking, but so was the beast. Could our spark outshine its claws? Sarah Jenkins' article ignited a fire no desert wind could snuff. It spread, not just in ink but in voices, screens, and streets, a roar that shook the bones of Nevada. The House of Whispers, child trafficking horror, the headline screamed, my story stripped bare for the world to see. I watched it unfold on Arthur's television, the mansion's silence shattered by news anchors' grim tones. Crowds gathered at the house's charred ruins, a blackened scar on the earth. Their signs scrawled with fury, justice for the lost, no more stolen kids. Strangers wept, their faces twisted, as if my pain had become theirs. Online, the story surged. Hashtags blooming like weeds, hashtag whispers exposed, hashtag save the children, each post a spark in a growing blaze. I held Leo, his tiny hand warm in mine, and felt the weight of eyes, millions, peering into our lives. Sarah had woven Martha Hayes' words with mine, her account of kids vanishing in the night, a keystone in the truth. Protesters chanted, their voices a pulse through the desert, demanding answers from a system that had turned away. Arthur stood beside me, his jaw tight, knowing this was no victory yet, only a door kicked open. The air was thick with purpose, but also peril. The system wasn't a ghost, it was a beast, and we'd pricked its hide. I saw Lily's face in the crowd's anger, her laugh in their cries, and her bracelet burned on my wrist. A reminder of why I'd spoken. The world was awake, its gaze fierce, but I felt exposed, a deer in a hunter's light. Comments online poured in, some calling me brave, others a liar. Their words a storm I couldn't escape. The protests grew, spilling into city halls, where officials squirmed under questions they'd dodged for years. Sarah's face appeared on screens, her voice steady, naming the house's sins without flinching. I was anonymous, my voice altered, but my truth was a blade, cutting deep. The desert seemed smaller now, its vastness dwarfed by the tide of human will. Yet fear lingered, a shadow at my back, whispering of retaliation. This was the moment we'd fought for, the public's roar weapon. But it was also a precipice, and I stood at its edge, Leo my only anchor. The truth broke like a dam, its waters unstoppable, fed by a new voice, Rebecca Green, a former volunteer at the House of Whispers. Sarah found her, a woman haunted, her eyes hollow with guilt. Rebecca came forward, not with words alone, but with proof. Photos, grainy but damning, of children bruised, caged, their faces blank with despair. She stood before cameras, her voice trembling but unbroken, recounting the house's horrors, kids locked in basements, adoptions that were sales, men in suits who came at night. Her testimony was a thunderclap, each detail a nail in the system's coffin. I watched, Leo asleep in my lap, my heart a drum of rage and relief. Rebecca's photos matched my memories, the attic where Lily and I hid, the creaking stairs I'd feared. She named names, men whose wealth had shielded them, their hands stained with our pain. Sarah's new report hit, pairing Rebecca's evidence with Martha's and mine, a trinity of truth no lie could bury. Online, the photos spread, each share a cry for justice, each comment a vow to fight. The system's veil was torn, its machinery laid bare, a network of greed, power, and silence that stretched beyond the desert. I felt Lily's presence, her bracelet a pulse, not of grief now, but of purpose. The world saw what I'd seen, felt what I'd felt, and their anger was a tide, sweeping away years of denial. Arthur's screens glowed with updates, Eleanor Vance's voice on the phone, confirming investigations launched, officials scrambling. The house wasn't just a place, it was a symbol, a wound the world could no longer ignore. I spoke to Sarah again, my voice recorded, anonymous, describing the fire, the man with snake eyes, the kids who vanished. My words, raw and sharp, fueled the fire, and I let them, for Leo, for every child still lost. The truth was no gentle thing. It was a blade, and we wielded it, cutting through decades of lies. The desert's silence was gone, replaced by a chorus of voices, demanding the system's end. Yet I knew the beast wasn't dead, its claws were sharp, and we'd drawn blood. This revelation was our crest, but the war was far from won. The system's pillars began to crack, its masters exposed under the world's glare. Arrests came swift, men in suits dragged from mansions, their names once whispered in fear now shouted in courtrooms. The man with snake eyes, a broker of lives, was among them, his face on every screen, no longer a shadow but flesh, cuffed and small. I watched, Leo in my arms, my breath caught in my throat. The system wasn't invincible, it bled. Public opinion shifted, the tide of doubt turning. Those who'd called me a liar online faltered, their comments drowned by apologies, by voices admitting they'd been blind. Officials who'd ignored the house's rumors now faced crowds, their excuses brittle as dry twigs. Sarah's reports kept coming, each one a hammer, smashing the prejudices that let the system thrive, beliefs that kids like me were worthless, that our pain didn't matter. Rebecca's photos haunted viewers, forcing them to see, to feel the weight of our truth. Martha's testimony, once dismissed, was now gospel, her voice a beacon for others to speak. The world's eyes changed, no longer blind but fierce, demanding accountability. Arthur stood with me, his resolve a rock, while Eleanor coordinated with lawyers, building cases that wouldn't break. The system fought, its lawyers spinning lies. But the evidence was a mountain, my story, Rebecca's photos, Martha's words, a chorus no money could silence. I felt Lily's spirit, her bracelet a light, guiding me through the chaos. The villains weren't just men, they were ideas, the notion that power could bury truth. Those ideas crumbled, shaken by a world that finally listened. Comments online shifted, strangers sharing their own stories, their own fights, a community born from our pain. I was still anonymous, but my voice, masked, carried weight, a spark that lit fires. The desert was no longer empty, it was alive with purpose, with people who saw us, who cared. Yet the system's roots ran deep, and I knew this was no end, only a fracture. The shaken ground was ours. But the beast still breathed, and we'd need to fight on. When you proved the world wrong, how did it feel? Share your moment in the comments. I read everyone. The beast was wounded, but its heart still beat. Could we strike true before it rose again? The world's clamor fell away, leaving a void in my chest, jagged as broken stone. The arrests, the crowds. Sarah's words blazing across screens. They were triumphs. But I stood in Arthur's mansion, Leo's soft breaths nearby, and felt only a crushing weight. Had I done enough? Would Lily, her bracelet a cold pulse on my wrist, see a girl who'd let her down? I'd ripped open the House of Whispers, spilled its secrets to the light. But the lost Lily, the others remained ghosts. Their faces carved in my dreams. I was 11, a spark in a tempest, but doubt burrowed deep, a venom whispering I'd failed. Was I a warrior, or just a child shouting into the desert's maw? The comments online, praising my courage, rang hollow, lies I couldn't swallow. I saw the fire again, the man with snake eyes, and wondered if saving Leo had only chained him to a life of running. Arthur's trust, Sarah's fight, the world's rage, they weren't mine, not truly. I was alone, a girl with a bracelet and a brother, bearing wounds no victory could mend. Lily's laugh, once a beacon. Now judge me, why her, not me? The system was wounded, but not slain, and I feared I'd poured out my soul, left barren, too small for this battle. The desert outside called. Its vastness a promise of escape, a place to vanish with Leo and let the fight fade. I held him, his warmth a frail tether, but doubt was a flood, dragging me down, snuffing the fire I'd carried. My hands shook, tracing Lily's bead, and I wondered if I'd ever be enough, if my scars were all I'd ever be. The fear wasn't the system's reach, nor the man from the fire. It was the girl in the mirror, small, frayed, staring back with eyes too old. I feared I'd always be shattered, a mosaic of cracks no truth could seal. Lily's bracelet was a shackle, binding me to a past I couldn't outrun. I sat by Leo's crib, his breaths a faint rhythm, and saw a future where I failed him, where the system's jaws closed tight. The terror was raw, a truth I'd buried. I was alone, not just now but forever, a child against a world that chewed up hope. Arthur found me, his voice steady, saying I'd saved Leo, given voice to the silenced. His words were a spark, piercing the gloom, forcing me to face the fear that I wasn't enough. Lily's loss wasn't my sin, but her memory was my duty, a flame to carry. Not a stone to break me. The system could hunt, but I'd hunted back and won ground. I wasn't whole, but I was here, breathing, fighting, and that was power. I saw the fire in my mind, not as ruin, but as birth, the moment I chose Leo over fear. The desert was cruel, but so was I, forged in its heat, unyielding. I wasn't my scars, I was the will that bore them. Have you ever felt alone, battling a world too vast? Share your fight in the comments. I read every word. I chose to rise, to be more than doubt, more than the girl who cowered in a burning house. In the mansion's dawn, Leo's tiny hand in mine, I vowed to stand. I was Chloe, not just a survivor but a force, a voice for those the system crushed. Lily's bracelet gleamed. No longer a wound but a star, guiding me to a purpose fiercer than fear. I'd shield Leo, not just from men with cold eyes, but from a world that forgets its strays. Arthur's faith, Sarah's pen. The stranger's cries, they were mine now, a strength I'd wield. The desert was wide, but my resolve was wider, a fire no storm could quench. I'd build a future, not for myself, but for Leo, for Lily. For every child still caged in shadows. The system lived, but so did I, and I'd face it, not as prey, but as a hunter, forged in grief and flame. Arthur stood with me, his eyes fierce. But my power came from within, from the girl who kicked a monster and saved a life. The fight wasn't over, but I was no longer running. I'd carve a path, brick by brick, for those who'd come after. This was my truth, my oath, sealed in the quiet of that morning, a life I'd shape with blood and will. The world could break, but I wouldn't, not while Leo breathed, not while Lily's memory burned. The system's claws were sharpening. Could my flame endure its strike? The system's beast, wounded but unbowed, struck back with fangs bared. The arrest had cracked its armor, but its heart still pulsed, fueled by men with deep pockets and deeper malice. A lawyer, sleek as a vulture, emerged from the shadows, his suit sharp, his words sharper. Filing a defamation suit against Arthur, Sarah, and me, though my name was cloaked. My story the target. They called us liars, fabricators weaving tales to smear honest men. The papers screamed their narrative, painting Arthur as a reckless tycoon, Sarah as a fame-hungry hack, and me as a troubled child, my truth a delusion. I stood in the mansion's cold halls. Leo's soft weight in my arms, and felt the air thicken with menace. Lily's bracelet burned on my wrist, a reminder of what they'd stolen, what they'd steal again if we broke. Online, their lies spread like wildfire, bots and paid voices drowning out the truth, labeling our fight a hoax. Comments turned venomous, strangers who'd cheered us now doubting. Their faith shaken by polished deceit. Arthur's face was stone, but his eyes betrayed strain, his empire under siege. Eleanor Vance called, her voice taut, warning of whispers in legal circles, men with ties to the house, pulling strings to crush us. The system wasn't just fighting, it was hunting, its claws aimed at our throats. A brick crashed through a mansion window at midnight, glass shattering like my resolve, a note tied to it. You'll pay. I saw the man with snake eyes in every shadow, his grin a promise of ruin. The desert outside was a void, but the real danger was here, in the system's wrath, its power vast as the sands. They didn't just want silence, they wanted erasure, to bury us as they buried Lily. I held Leo tighter, his warmth a fragile shield, and knew this was no game. Their counterattack was a storm, and we were its mark. The world's gaze, once our strength, wavered. And I felt the ground shift, our fight teetering on a knife's edge. The system's assault grew wild, a tempest no wall could hold. They leaked lies about Arthur, old scandals dredged from his past, twisted to paint him a villain, tax fraud, affairs, whispers of madness after his wife's death. The internet feasted, memes and threads tearing him apart. His name a punchline where it had been a shield. I watched, my stomach a knot, as strangers who'd rallied for us turned, their comments now cruel, calling him a fraud who'd used a child's pain for clout. They came for me next, though my face was hidden. Blogs called me a puppet, a liar coached by Arthur's money. No kid could survive that fire. They wrote, as if my scars were fiction. The mansion felt like a cage, its windows barred, its air heavy with dread. A protest formed outside, not for us, but against us. Signs branding Arthur a manipulator, me a myth. Someone spray-painted, liar, on the gate, red paint dripping like blood. Lily's bracelet was a weight, her memory a wound reopened by each attack. Sarah's articles slowed, her editor spooked by legal threats, and even Eleanor's calls grew cautious, her warnings sharp with fear. The system's lies were a flood, washing away our truth. And I felt it slipping, the fire I'd kindled dimming. At night, I heard noises, cars idling, footsteps on gravel, and saw the man from the fire in my dreams, his hands reaching for Leo. The world was fracturing, our allies scattered, and guilt gnawed me had I sparked this chaos, endangering Leo, Arthur, all we'd built. The desert's silence mocked me, its vastness a mirror to my smallness. The system wasn't just fighting, it was winning, its lies a noose tightening around us. I held Leo, his eyes clear but fragile, and wondered if I'd led us to ruin. We didn't break, though the system's storm raged fierce. Arthur called a war council, Sarah, Eleanor, and me, in a room lit by lamplight, the desert dark beyond. We'd fight in court, not with words, but with proof, my story the cornerstone. Sarah, her fire rekindled, dug deeper, chasing the system's money trails. Eleanor brought files, names of kids who'd vanished, each a dagger to wield. I spoke, my voice steady, recounting the fire, the cabinet, the man with snake eyes, every detail a brick in our defense. The lawsuit forced us to adapt, to move from public cries to legal trenches, a new battlefield where truth was our only weapon. Arthur hired lawyers, their faces grim but sharp, ready to counter the system's lies. The mansion became a fortress, guards at every gate, cameras sweeping the night. I felt Lily's bracelet pulse, not a burden now, but a call, urging me to stand. The world's doubt was a weight, but we turned inward, our circle small but ironclad. Online, some still believed, their comments a lifeline. Hashtag whispers truth, a faint but growing chant. We filed countersuits, naming the house's backers, their wealth no shield against our evidence. The system's lies had overreached, waking new allies, lawyers, activists, strangers who'd lost children to similar shadows. I held Leo, his warmth my anchor, and saw a path, narrow but real. The desert was no refuge, but neither was it our grave. We'd fight from this new ground, our resolve a flame no wind could kill. The system had pushed us here, but we'd push back, not as victims, but as hunters, ready for the long war. The battle was joined, but the system's roots ran deep. Could we uproot it before it struck again? The system's lies were a storm, but the world stirred, a tide rising against its gale. Strangers, once swayed by venomous posts, rallied anew, their voices a chorus cutting through the desert's hush. Online, #WhispersTruth surged, each share a defiance, each comment a brick in our wall. Crowds returned to the ruins of the House of Whispers, their signs bolder, their chants a drumbeat. No more lies. I watched on Arthur's screens, Leo's warmth in my arms, and felt the air shift. Heavy with purpose, activists joined, their petitions flooding city halls, demanding trials for the house's masters. Lawyers, drawn by our truth, offered aid, their briefcases shields against the system's suits. Sarah's articles, once stifled, roared back, her words fueled by fresh leaks from insiders sick of silence. Eleanor coordinated, her phone a lifeline, linking us to survivors, kids like me, their stories echoing mine, each one a spark in the dark. I saw Lily's face in their courage, her bracelet a pulse on my wrist, urging me to stand with them. The collective was no mob. It was a blade, honed by shared pain, aimed at the system's heart. Donations poured in, not for us, but for the fight, funding legal battles. Shelters for kids still trapped. The desert's vastness shrank, its silence drowned by human will. I was no longer alone. These strangers, these voices, were kin, bound by a vow to end the house's legacy. The system's claws were sharp, but our unity was sharper, a force no lie could break. This action, this rising, was our answer to their storm. A fire kindled by truth, burning bright. Arthur's mansion, once a fortress, became a home, its walls softened by bonds forged in fire. He sat me down, his eyes steady, and spoke of family. Not as blood, but as choice. He wanted to adopt me, to give Leo and me his name Caldwell, a shield against the world's teeth. I hesitated, Lily's bracelet heavy, her memory a whisper of loss. But Leo's laugh, clear now, pulled me forward. I said yes, not for me but for him, for a future where he'd never know the house's shadows. The papers were signed, my name now Chloe Caldwell. Leo renamed Leo Arthur, a tribute to the man who'd chosen us. Arthur wasn't just a savior, he was kin, his grief for his lost wife a mirror to mine for Lily. We shared meals, not as strangers, but as family, his laughter a rare light in the desert's gloom. Sarah visited, her pen still sharp, but now she lingered, swapping stories, her fire a sister to mine. Eleanor, too, became more than a voice on the phone, her visits warm, her wisdom a guide. These bonds were no accident. They were built, brick by brick, in the crucible of our fight. I felt Lily's spirit. Not accusing but proud, her bracelet a bond to this new clan. The system's lies had sought to isolate us, but we wove tighter, a net to catch those still falling. This family, this chosen kin, was my strength, a root deep in barren soil, holding fast against the storm. The community was no mere crowd. It was a living thing, its pulse a defiance of the system's dark. Strangers became allies. Their voices online a choir, #whispers truth to him that drowned out lies. They shared our story, not as gossip but as gospel, each post a vow to keep the fire lit. Funds flowed, not to us but to sanctuaries for kids like me, to lawyers tearing at the system's roots. Survivors spoke, their tales a mirror to mine, their courage a light in the desert's night. I saw them on screens, kids with eyes like mine, and felt Lily's bracelet pulse, her memory alive in their stand. Protests grew, not just at the house's ruins but in cities, their chants a tide washing away years of silence. Sarah's words, Eleanor's plans, Arthur's shield, they were fueled by this community, a force no wealth could bend. The system's suits faltered, their lies brittle against our truth, backed by thousands who believed. I held Leo, his eyes bright, and knew this was no dream but a power real as stone. The desert was no longer empty. It was alive with hands joined, with hearts that saw us, that cared. This community rebuilt us, not with pity but with purpose, a strength that turned scars into armor. We weren't just fighting. We were building a world where no child would vanish. This was our power, our unity, a flame that would burn until the system was ash. The community stood tall. But the system's shadow lingered. Could we hold the line against its final strike? The truth we'd clawed from darkness became a torch, and the media swarmed like vultures to a kill. Screens across the world glowed with our story, news anchors' voices heavy, picking apart the house of whispers like bones in the desert. My words, masked to hide my face, rang out on talk shows. Radio waves, each syllable a spark flung into the world's heart. Sarah Jenkins stood tall, her reports now national, her face etched beside images of the house's blackened ruins. She spoke of me, a nameless girl who defied a system, and of Leo, the infant I'd carried through fire, our tale of flame that spread. Online, my altered voice went viral, #WhispersTruth a wildfire. Each share a shout that shattered the desert's hush. Programs invited survivors, their stories echoing mine, their eyes bearing the same scars I knew. Lily's bracelet pulsed on my wrist, her spirit alive in this chorus, no longer a wound but a beacon. The media was no gentle ally. It was a beast, ravenous for sensation, yet it carried our truth to places the system couldn't touch. Arthur's mansion buzzed, Eleanor fielding calls from reporters to keep the story sharp. The world's gaze was fierce, but divided. Some hailed us, others sneered, calling me a myth, a pawn. I held Leo, his warmth my ground, and felt the desert's vastness shrink, outmatched by this tide. The media's hunger was our weapon, amplifying our fight, but it was a blade that cut both ways, exposing us to eyes both kind and cruel. Why do victims get scorned for speaking? Drop your thoughts below. When did you see truth attacked? The system's lords, once cloaked in power, crumbled under the law's slow hammer. Courtrooms, cold as desert stone, hosted their fall, the men behind the House of Whispers now in chains. The man with snake eyes, his smirk erased, faced a judge, his name a stain on every tongue. Prosecutors wielded Rebecca's photos, Martha's testimony, my story evidence like iron, forging convictions for trafficking, abuse, deceit. The system's veins, laid bare, began to bleed, its wealth no shield against our truth. I watched on Arthur's screens, Leo in my arms, my breath caught, not in triumph, but in heavy calm. Justice was no swift arrow. It was a boulder, rolling steady, crushing what it met. Online, #JusticeForWhispers soared, the world's cheers a pulse, but I felt Lily's absence. Her bracelet a reminder of the cost lives lost, years stolen. Eleanor's calls detailed verdicts, shelters rising for kids still caged, a legacy of our fight. The desert's silence broke. Not with vengeance, but with reckoning, a debt repaid in part. The system lived, but it limped, and I stood straighter, a girl who'd sparked this tide. The law's answer was our foundation. Carved from pain, a step toward a world where no child vanished. The beast was bound, but not slain, its shadow still a warning. Yet this justice, hard won, was ours, a light for those still lost. In the mansion's quiet dawn, Leo's soft breaths my tether, I chose to shed hate's burden. The men in shackles, the system's lies they'd taken Lily, scarred me, but I wouldn't let their venom fester. Hatred was a yoke, heavy as the house's chains, and I'd broken free, not for them, but for Leo, for me. Lily's bracelet shone, a guide to peace, not rage. I saw the man with snake eyes, his power dust, and felt no thrill, only release. Online, some cursed our foes, their anger a fire, but I turned from it, seeking light, not ash. I told Arthur, my voice clear, I'd fight for hope. For kids who needed dreams, not wrath. The desert was harsh, but so was hate, and I'd sow better seeds in its soil. Comments asked how I could move on. I didn't forgive, I just refused their hold. The system's fall was justice, not a call to burn. I held Leo, his eyes bright, and saw a future of safety, not anger. This choice was my power, a quiet defiance of the pain that sought to shape me. The world watched, and I'd show them healing, a path from scars to purpose, not vengeance. My fight was for those still lost, for a world where no child feared the dark. And hate had no place in that vision. Justice rose, but shadows stirred. Could we build a dawn before the night returned? The desert's hush was a lie, masking the system's final snarl. A letter came, slipped under Arthur's gate at dawn, its words like venom, you'll never be safe. No name, no mark, but I knew its source, the beast we'd wounded, its claws still sharp. The men in chains hadn't silenced it. Others lurked, their power deep, their hatred deeper. I held Leo, his warmth a frail shield, and felt the fire's heat again. The man with snake eyes grinning in my mind. Lily's bracelet burned, a pulse of warning, her memory a whisper of what we could lose. The mansion, once a fortress, felt fragile. Its walls no match for this shadow. Arthur's face was grim, his guards doubled, but the threat was a specter, slipping through locks. Online, whispers grew, trolls revived old lies. Claiming the house's masters were framed, their posts a hiss of doubt. Eleanor called, her voice tight, saying sources spoke of a last push, a plan to scare us silent or worse. The system's roots ran far, its money a river still flowing to hands that dealt in fear. I saw the desert's vastness, not as freedom, but as a trap, its sands hiding hunters. The world's cheers, once loud, felt distant, our fight a spark flickering in the dark. I stood by the window, Leo asleep, and knew this wasn't over. The beast had one more strike, aimed at our hearts. The letter's words echoed, a promise of ruin, and I felt the weight of every choice, every word I'd spoken. This threat was no ghost. It was flesh, waiting to claim us. We faced the threat, not with fear, but with steel. Arthur called Sarah, Eleanor, our circle tight, and we planned, not to run, but to stand. The letter was a taunt, but also a mistake. Its cinder grew bold, traceable. Sarah's contacts traced a signal, a hired man, no master but a pawn, his car seen circling the mansion. We didn't wait. Arthur's guards, sharp and silent, tracked him to a desert shack. His phone spilling text to a name tied to the house's old lords. I stood with Arthur, my voice firm, demanding we end this. Not for vengeance, but for Leo's future. We went to the shack at dusk. The desert a sea of shadow, my heart a drum, but steady. The man was there, no snake eyes but his kin, his sneer a mirror of the system's scorn. He lunged, but Arthur's men were faster, pinning him. His threats empty against our truth. I spoke, my words a blade, telling him the world knew, that his masters were dust. Lily's bracelet gleamed, her spirit a fire in me, unyielding. The man spat, but his eyes broke, fear where power had been. We left him to the law, his phone a map to his cinder, another thread unraveled. The desert watched, its silence no longer a threat but a witness. This was our stand, not loud but fierce, a line drawn for Leo, for Lily, for us. The victory was no roar, but a quiet dawn, the desert's light soft on the mansion's walls. The man's arrest led to another, a chain of small falls, the system's last gasp fading. No crowds cheered, no headlines blazed, but the threat was gone, its shadow lifted. I held Leo, his eyes clear, and felt a stillness, not joy but peace, hard won. Arthur stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder, our family sealed in this moment. Lily's bracelet was a star, not a scar. Her memory a guide to this calm. The world moved on, but we'd carved a space, a safety no one could steal. Online, #whispers truth lingered, a quiet pulse, the fight not forgotten, but settled. Sarah wrote one last piece, simple, naming the final arrests, her pen a tribute to our stand. Eleanor's voice, over the phone, spoke of kids saved, shelters built, our truth a root for their growth. The desert was vast, but no longer cruel. It was ours, a place to breathe. This triumph was silent, not in weakness but in strength, a vow kept without fanfare. I looked at Leo, his future bright, and knew we'd won, not with noise but with will, a foundation for those who'd follow. The system's echo was faint, its power broken, and I stood, not as a girl but as a force, ready for what came next. The dark was gone, but light needed tending. Could we build a haven from our scars? Arthur Caldwell was no mere savior. He was the rock where my broken pieces found rest. In the mansion's quiet, after the system's last snarl faded, he became more than a protector. He was family, his presence a balm for wounds I thought would never close. He didn't speak of healing with grand words. His actions carved it into being. Each morning, he sat with me and Leo, sharing coffee in silence, his eyes carrying a grief I recognized. A mirror to my own for Lily. He'd lost his wife, a scar he bore without flinching, and in that shared pain, I found a bridge. He taught me family wasn't blood but choice, a bond forged in fire, not given by birth. When he adopted us, naming me Chloe Caldwell and Leo as Leo Arthur, it wasn't just a legal act, it was a vow. a hand extended across the desert's void. He listened when I spoke of Lily, her bracelet a weight I still carried, and never pushed me to forget but to honor her by living. He showed me how to laugh again. His rare smiles alight in the mansion's vast halls. Arthur didn't erase my past. He gave me tools to carry its stories of his own losses, moments of rebuilding, each one a map for my own path. He took us to the desert's edge, where the sands stretched endless, and spoke of starting anew, not as escape, but as defiance. His wealth built the Havenwood Sanctuary, but his heart made it a home, a place for kids like me to mend. I saw Lily's spirit in his resolve, her bracelet a pulse, no longer a chain but a thread tying me to this new life. Arthur's patience, his quiet strength, showed me I wasn't just a survivor, but a girl who could grow, who could love without fear. He stood with me as I learned to sleep without nightmares, to hold Leo without dread. The world's noise online cheers, #whispers truth posts meant less than his steady hand, guiding me to peace. He was my healer, not by fixing me, but by standing beside me. A father who chose us when the world had not. The desert was harsh, but Arthur was my shelter, his love a fire that warmed without burning, a light that led me home. I stood in the mansion's dawn, Leo's soft breaths a rhythm, and chose to forgive, not for the system's men, not for the man with snake eyes, but for me, for the girl who'd carried guilt like a stone. I blamed myself for Lily's loss, her empty bed a wound I thought was my fault. Her bracelet, once a lash, became a mirror, showing me a child who'd fought, who'd saved Leo when she couldn't save her friend. I forgave that child, not for failing but for enduring, for rising from fire with a brother in her arms. The desert's silence held no judgment, only space, and I let go of the shame that clung like dust. I forgave Arthur, too, for the moment I doubted him, his phone call I'd misread as betrayal. He'd stood by us, his heart true. And I saw his flaws not as faults, but as proof of his humanity. I didn't forgive the system's lords, their sins were too heavy, but I released the hate that tethered me to them. Hatred was a chain, and I'd broken enough to know freedom's taste. Online, some urged vengeance, their comments of fire, but I turned away, choosing peace over rage. I spoke to Arthur, my voice steady, saying I'd live for Leo, for Lily's memory, not for the system's ruin. The world watched, and I'd show them a girl who could heal, not burn. Forgiving wasn't forgetting. It was cutting the ropes that bound me to pain, letting me breathe. I held Leo, his eyes clear, and saw a future unmarred by my scars. The system's shadow lingered, but I wouldn't let it define me. I forgave the strangers who doubted us, their words once knives, now just echoes. Lily's spirit was no accusation but a guide, her bracelet a light, leading me to this choice. The desert was vast, but so was my heart, and I'd fill it with purpose, not anger. This forgiveness was my strength, a quiet act of defiance, a step toward a life I'd shape, not inherit. The Havenwood Sanctuary rose from Arthur's mansion, its walls no longer a fortress but a beacon, a symbol of healing carved in desert stone. It wasn't just a place, it was a promise. A home for kids like me, their scars welcomed, their voices heard. I walked its halls, Leo in my arms, and saw rooms bright with color, beds soft with care, windows open to the desert's endless sky. The sanctuary was my heart made real, a place where the system's shadow couldn't reach. Arthur built it, but I named it Havenwood, a word that tasted of shelter, of roots in barren soil. Lily's bracelet gleamed as I hung signs, simple words, "You are seen," painted by my hand, each one a vow to every child who entered. The sanctuary was our triumph, not loud like protest, but steady. A light that endured. Kids arrived, their eyes wary, like mine had been, and I greeted them, not as a savior, but as kin, my story a map for their own. Online, #Havenwood Sanctuary trended. Photos of its gates wide, inviting, shared with comments of hope. The world saw it, not as charity, but as rebellion, a refusal to let the system's darkness win. I felt Lily's spirit in every laugh. Her memory no longer a wound, but a seed, growing in these walls. The sanctuary was more than brick. It was a mirror, reflecting the girl I'd become, not broken but whole, her scars a strength. I stood at its entrance, Leo's hand in mine, and knew this was our legacy, a place where pain became purpose. The desert stretched beyond, its harshness no match for this haven, its silence drowned by young voices. The system's echo was faint, but the sanctuary's light was fierce, a symbol of healing that would stand long after I was gone. I'd built here, not just for me, but for every child who'd known the house's chains, a home where they could rise, unbroken. The sanctuary stood, a light in the dark. Could I guide its flame to inspire others? The Havenwood Sanctuary became my anchor, its walls a testament to survival, not just mine, but for every child who'd known the system's teeth. I was Chloe Caldwell now. No longer the girl who hid in a burning house, but a mentor, a guide for those still lost. The desert's harsh light softened here, its sands no match for the sanctuary's promise. I woke each dawn to greet new kids, their eyes wary, their shoulders hunched, mirroring the girl I'd been. I didn't erase their pain. I showed them how to carry it, how to turn scars into strength. My days were steady, filled with small acts, tying shoelaces, reading stories, painting signs that read, "You are enough." Leo, now toddling, laughed in the courtyard, his joy a pulse that steadied my own. Arthur was there, his presence a rock, his mansion transformed into this haven, its halls alive with young voices. I wore Lily's bracelet, not as a wound, but as a vow, her memory woven into every step I took. The sanctuary wasn't just a place. It was my purpose, a life carved from the ashes of the House of Whispers. I led activities, taught kids to draw, to speak their truths without fear. Online, #Havenwood Sanctuary grew. Photos of our work shared, not as pity, but as power, a beacon for those still trapped. The system's shadow was faint, its masters gone, but I built for the future, not the past. I stood with kids as they cried, their stories echoing mine, and offered my hand, not as a savior, but as kin. The desert was vast, but so was my resolve, a fire that burned steady, not wild. I was no longer running. I was planting, rooting hope in barren soil. Arthur watched, his pride quiet. And I knew this was home, not just for me, but for Leo, for every child who'd find us. My life was stable, not in wealth, but in meaning, each day a brick in a world where no kid would vanish. I saw Lily's spirit in the sanctuary's light, her laugh in the kids' smiles, and I lived for them, for her, for the girl I'd become, unbowed, a flame that warmed without consuming. My story, once a whisper, became a shout, not for me, but for those who heard it and rose. At the Havenwood Sanctuary, I shared my journey, not as a hero, but as a girl who'd fought and lived. Kids listened, their eyes wide, and I saw sparks kindle hope where despair had reigned. I spoke of the fire, of Leo in my arms, of Lily's bracelet, now a symbol of defiance, not loss. My words, raw and true, reached beyond our walls, carried by Sarah's pen, by videos posted online, my voice masked but piercing. #Whispers Truth evolved, no longer just a cry for justice, but a call to stand, to heal. Survivors wrote to me, their letters a tide, each one a story of pain turned to purpose. A girl in Ohio started a shelter, naming it Havenwood's Kin. A boy in Texas spoke out, his tale toppling another house of lies. I read their words, my heart a drum, and knew I'd lit fires I'd never see. Online, strangers shared, not just my story, but theirs. #Havenwood Sanctuary, a banner for those who'd been unseen. I stood with kids at the sanctuary, helping them write their truths, their voices small but growing, each one a rebellion against silence. I taught them to paint, to sing, to claim their space, and they did, their art a mirror to my own. Lily's spirit was in their courage, her bracelet a light I carried for them. The world watched, not with pity but awe, as our sanctuary became a movement, a proof that scars could build, not break. I wasn't alone. These kids, these strangers, were my kin, their fights my own. The desert silence was gone, replaced by a chorus, a wave of voices inspired to rise. I lived for this, for the ripple of my truth, for the lives it touched, each one a star in the dark, guiding others home. The Havenwood Sanctuary's gates stood wide, its iron carved with flowers, a symbol of welcome in the desert's cruel sprawl. I walked through it daily, Leo at my side, his hand in mine, his laughter a song that drowned the past. The gate was more than metal. It was our triumph, a door no system could shut, a light for every child who'd known shadow. I hung signs above it, painted with kids' hands, your scars are your strength, words that echoed in my bones. The sanctuary hummed, its halls alive with young voices, their art on every wall. Their dreams a fire no wind could snuff. Lily's bracelet gleamed, no longer a chain but a star, her memory the heart of this place. Online, the world saw our gate, hashtag Havenwood Sanctuary trending. Photos shared with comments that wept and roared. This was our end, not in battle but in building, a haven where pain became power. I stood at the gate, the desert vast but kind. Its light soft on my face. Leo ran ahead, chasing a butterfly, and I smiled, whole in a way I'd never dreamed. The system was dust, its shadow gone, and we'd risen, not just to survive, but to thrive. I spoke to the camera, my voice clear. No mask now. Your scars are your strength. They don't define you. They guide you. If you've climbed from your darkest place, share your story below. Your words might save someone, light their way when all seems lost. Thank you for walking this path with me. Subscribe, support our sanctuary, keep this fire alive. We're not done. We're just beginning. The gate stood open, a symbol of hope, a promise that no child would walk alone. The desert watched, its silence no longer a threat but a canvas painted with our light. If you found strength in your scars, tell me how below. Your story could be someone's beacon,